Page 365, questions 15, no, sorry, page 372, questions 9 through 15, 5.8. I'm going to go over a little bit about what we went over yesterday, because you don't have a video on it until I can find that SD card. So what we went over yesterday was this. Basically, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? That's when it's a right triangle. So let's say a squared is 1, b squared is 2, c squared is going to be the square root of 5. 2 squared plus 1 squared, or 1 plus 4 is 5, right? So the square root of 5. Does that make sense? Because and the square root of 5 is a little bit more than 2. Notice how this will never meet, right? Because it's a right angle. Now if it were less, right? If it were less, this side, from here to here, were less than the square root of 2, this would be what we call an acute angle, right? Or acute triangle. Okay? So, if the longest side is less than, or the square of the longest side is less than the sum of the two other sides, then it's going to be an acute angle. Okay? Now, if it's greater than, if the square of the longest side is greater than the sum of the two other sides, it's going to be an obtuse angle. Okay? Now, the only problems are when you come into an obtuse angle that has the longest side that's longer than the sum of the two sides. Right? Because I can't make a triangle with a side that's longer than 3. Does that make sense? If you have 1 and 2, I can't make a side, this other side, to be longer than 3. Right? It has to be less than 3. Does that make sense? Okay? So, C, in this case, C has to be less than the sum of A and B. Okay? But for it to be acute, it has to be more than the difference. So the longest side, right? If you find the difference of the two, the difference of these two would be 1, right? So this side cannot be acute with anything less than 1. Okay? It won't work. It won't make it. So the C has to be bigger or less than the sum of these two, and it cannot be, for it to be acute, it cannot be less than the difference of the two smaller sides. Okay? And that's it for yesterday's stuff. For today's stuff, we have a 45-45, which, keep in mind, are congruent angles, right? So with a 45-45, we have x and x and this hypotenuse. Okay? The hypotenuse is x square root 2. Okay? And if we think about that in the Pythagorean theorem, we have x squared plus x squared equals an unknown, right? So let's figure out what it equals. So x squared plus x squared equals some unknown squared, or we'll call it y squared, right? Okay, so what is x squared plus x squared? X squared plus x squared. 2x squared. Come on, people. It's early, but it's not hard. 2x squared. Right? And then you take the square root of both sides. Remember the square root property we learned yesterday? Square root, so this gets rid of that, but, so I get to trade one of these for one outside the box. I got x square root 2 is equal to y, and that is why we get x square root 2 for the hypotenuse. Okay? It's just Pythagorean theorem. Okay? Same thing here. Okay? What you'll find with 30, 60, 90, okay, is that if the small side is x, the hypotenuse is 2x, and the other leg is x square root 3. Okay? These are going to be crucial to have in your cheat sheet to use on the test. Alright? So, number 9 has a 45. So what's this side over here? What's this angle? 45. 45. Okay. So we know these are congruent. We know it's 45, 45, right? We know if this is x, then this is x square root 2, right? Right? If this is x, then the hypotenuse is x square root 2. That means x square root 2 is equal to 15. X square root 2 is equal to 15. So if I want to know what x is, I divide by square root of 2. Now here's the rub. You can't have the square root of 2 in the bottom. It seems like that would be so easy. We're done, right? X is 15 divided by square root 2. But we can't have the square root in the bottom. We got to get rid of it. So we got to multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2. Does everyone notice that that's just 1, right? A factor of 1. But it's a special factor of 1. And what it does is it gets rid of this, right? So now we get x is equal to 15 square root of 2 over 2. So you get to trade 2 of these. Because what's happening here is you get 2 times 2, right? Which is 4. Square root of 4 is 2. So you get to trade 2 of these for one outside the box. That's what's going on with that. And that way we don't have the square root in the bottom. Now I've done a lot of research on this square root in the bottom thing, and I have not found any reason why you can't have square roots in the bottom. Pretty much because someone says so. So, I mean, that's just the rule it is. I'm the messenger. That's what we got to do. Okay? This one, again, 2 congruent angles. Well, if they add up to be 90, they have to be 45, right? So we know that this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. If this side is x, this is x square root 2, right? So this has to be 18. I mean, it wasn't hard at all, right? If 18 square root 2 is equal to x square root 2, right? Then all I have to do is divide by the square root of 2, and they cancel, and I get 18 equals x. And it really is that simple. I mean, these are pretty easy. So it's either going to be, I'm going to plug this in here, chug it out. It's always I'm dealing with the x square root 2. Okay. All right.